How much does it cost to subdivide a property in New Zealand? You as a total noob to subdivisions are probably not going to know what should and shouldn't be on that plan. What is the time frame necessary to gain title? Stick around and I'll answer those questions too. Yo, this is part 2 of a 3-part series all about subdivisions. If you haven't already, check out the first part here where we talk about setting up your subdivision team, using people that you know will push the project through for you. So there's a few key people you're going to need to start with. You're going to need a designer, you're going to need a surveyor, and you're going to need a planner. Today we'll do a deep dive into what happens once you've got consent, but before me, the builder, starts with the building consent. As well as that, I've got some questions here about subdividing costs and timeline and process. So stick around and I'll answer those questions too. I'm by no means a subdividing expert, but I built my own house on a subdivided section and I've done my own subdividable jobs, as well as a number of the sites I'm working on right now are subdividables for my clients. Subdividable, subdividable, subdividable. If you're a uni student watching this, take a shot every time I say subdivide. If you're doing a traditional 2 or 3 lot subdivision, this would be the process. It's not the only way to do it, and a lot of this process does depend on your specific site, your specific plans, and where things like the mains are. Let's jump into it. So you've engaged the designer, surveyor, and planner to put your resource consent together. Then we've also got the surveyor to come and do a site survey and do a set out and mark the locations of the boundaries. So at this stage we would then decide, does the builder start first or does the civil contractor start first and lay all the drains, etc. So it makes sense to do as much of the on-site resource consent conditions as possible and get them out of the way so that the builder, me, comes in and has a clear run at the section without all of that other stuff happening. So a basic list of services where you've got your 3 waters, you've got fresh water, you've got to get rid of stormwater. Stormwater is like basically where does the rain go. So then you got sewage, anything that goes down like a sink or a drain or a toilet in your house will end up in the sewage. So that's water. Then we've also got power. 99% of the time that's coming from the main network. In Wellington you'll engage North Power or Wellington Electricity. We've also got telecommunications, aka broadband, so you can download these in HD and watch them. And then we have got gas, if you have got gas, hot water or cooking. And what other services do we have? So the biggest thing with installing all of this is to have a clear plan. Your surveyor and your designer need to produce what's called an engineering plan, listing out all of the services, where the mains are, the depth of the mains, and it has a lot of details on it, like how many manholes are going to be required, where the trenches are going to go, where the connections to each lot are going to go. Having a clear plan and then getting that plan to your civils contractor is critical to success. And you as a total noob to subdivisions are probably not going to know what should and shouldn't be on that plan. And even people who are doing it all the time often miss stuff. The one thing I can recommend is A, find a good team of contractors to work with, and then B, make sure that you get the plan in front of them as soon as possible and get them to look at it and ask if they're happy with it and if there's anything they've noticed, because most likely they would have worked on a number of subdividables already, and so they'll spot things that have been happening on other sites and be like, oh, I noticed you've missed the connection to the rainwater tanks or the driveway sumps, or the fall to here, or that hole is too deep. They'll think of specific things that have happened on the last few jobs that they can address early on with you on your plan. So unfortunately, it is very piecemeal. So power, we can use Wellington Electricity or North Power. Telecom here in Wellington, you have to use Chorus, but we often lay a green duct for them so that they can just pull a draw wire through later. Gas, we have to go to Gas Hub. Down here is run by Powerco. And then sewage, stormwater, fresh water is all being taken over by 3 waters. Right now in Wellington, it's run by Wellington Water. The main contractor is the civils drain layer, which is different from the residential drain layer. If the mains are here, the civils guy connects the main to the edge of your sections. The residential drain layer connects it from the edge of the section to the house, usually when we start building the house. And it all sounds a bit backwards and a lot, but often building a house is a big, messy, intrusive process, and we might be driving piles, or we've got big, massive concrete trucks and all that stuff coming in. And so often it's easier to do the house bit in a second whack. In my experience, the civils drain layer is the guy or girl that will make it all happen and brings it all together in terms of they'll dig the trench for all the services, they'll lay the 3 waters, they will often dig out and prepare the driveway crossing, and we can even get them to do that bulk site scrape work, and they need a clear run at that. So we like to get them in to do that first before we even consider building. And then we know that that stuff's done and it's out of the way, and then we can build our house without it being in the way of a big 6-ton digger needing to dig a giant hole in the backyard to connect to the main. Right now in Wellington, these civil drain layers are booked out anywhere from 2 months to 6 months in advance. So the first thing I would recommend you do is start planning early. Back at resource consent stage, you start sounding out your civils team and working out who you're going to work with. And I would pick 1 or 2 people, hone in on those 1 or 2 people, kind of find out which one do you gel with, which one's price is right, which one's timeline is right, but do that back at resource consent stage so that when your consent is issued, they're ready to rip into it. The worst thing is if you wait for your consent to be issued and then you go and find a team, you've kind of unnecessarily wasted all that downtime at resource consent stage only to have another 3 to 4 months of downtime on site while you wait for that team to get together. This is assuming that you want to like power through those stages as well. Like you don't have to go that way, but in my experience, everyone that I'm working with wants it done now. And so part of what we do is work out little efficiencies in the timeline where we can double up on, if you do this now instead of here, you save this 3-month waiting period. Keep the ball rolling. So the order of the process is, in general, we do the 3 waters first. And then while that trench is open, you would lay the ducts for gas, telecom, and power. So we don't necessarily run the power cable, and Wellington Electricity or North Power will just put a bollard on the edge of the property with a fuse for the future sparky and linesman to connect the house into. And then we put a duct, an orange duct, in the trench to where the house is going, and then later on we pull the cable through. So we've had on a couple of our jobs where we've tried to be nice and work alongside subdivision guys at the same time, and unfortunately it just makes their job harder and our job harder. We've had one job where the driveway's been closed for like weeks while we've been building the house, and that means all of the materials and all of the deliveries we get have to be walked from the edge of the road to the property. At the end of the day, that just adds cost and complication to your project, which you will then ultimately in one way or another pay for. So with a little bit of planning and picking the right team early on, you can avoid some of these complications and frustrations. Yo, congratulations, you've made it to the most important part of the video. If you're still watching this, you're one of the select few, and we want to reward that by answering your questions specifically. So how much does it cost to subdivide a property in New Zealand? Generally, the average 2-lot subdivision is currently costing around $120,000 to $150,000. This is for approved consent all the way through to issue of title and everything in between, including council contributions, LINS fees, lawyer fees, service fees, fees. Bearing in mind the number of lots you do, the area you're doing it in, the special rebates that your council has in place to promote growth, all of those things will change that figure. A 2-lot subdivision is probably the most inefficient way to subdivide, and as you get up, you do get economies of scale, but you will hit a point where there's just a per lot fee. And in my experience, currently that per lot fee is around $50,000 to $60,000. James Lee, what is the time frame necessary to gain title? Good question, James. We talked last time about consent can take about 6 to 9 months minimum, and I would say that getting from consent to issue of title is probably realistically another 6 to 9 months. 6 if it's streamlined and your team's ready to go the moment consent's issued and there's no holdups, no weather delays, and it's a nice clean cut subdivision. 9 to 12 if it's a multi-lot and you've got things like, we've got a job where we've got to move the main and stuff like that. Each complication you add probably adds a month minimum. Peter Murphy, any recommended designers to help on the Kapiti Coast? So I would recommend talking to Ben at Gill Plans as a designer. He's a great guy and has a good mix of design and simplicity and has got some subdividing experience. And then I do believe Cuttress is a larger firm that has an office in Lower Hutt and one on the coast. They're also working out there. Give those two, start with them, and if not, one thing I always do is like, if they can't help you, just say, oh, can you recommend someone? To keep this segment going, comment below, boom, that's it.